The first thing I noticed was the coffee machine. Daniel always made the coffee. 7 years, every single morning. He was in by 7:15 and the pot was already going by the time I unlocked my office. It was such a small thing that I never thought about it until that Tuesday in March when I walked in and the machine was cold. Empty. The little blue light wasn't on. I remember standing in the kitchenette for maybe 30 seconds, holding my keys, thinking he must be sick. Daniel didn't get sick. In 7 years of running Brightline strategy together, he had taken exactly 4 sick days, and 3 of them were when his daughter Mia was born. I pulled out my phone to text him and that's when I saw the email. It was from our bookkeeper, Renata. Subject line, urgent, please call me before you do anything today. Sent at 6:42 that morning. I called her from the kitchen. I didn't even sit down. She said, "Marcus, are you somewhere you can talk?" And I knew. I didn't know what, but I knew something. My stomach went cold before she said another word. She told me the operating account was at $412. $412. On Friday afternoon there had been $186,000 in it. She told me the reserve account, the one we used for taxes and emergencies, was at 0. That one had been holding just under $98,000. I remember asking her to repeat the numbers. Twice. Like maybe she was reading them wrong off a screen. Then she told me about the wire transfers. 3 of them, all sent Monday afternoon while I was at the client lunch in Denver. All signed off by Daniel. All going to an LLC I had never heard of. Meridian Growth Partners. I hung up on her. I didn't mean to. I just lowered the phone and my hand stopped working. I walked to Daniel's office. The door was closed, which was unusual. He never closed it. I opened it and the room was empty in a way that's hard to describe. Not messy empty, not he took the day off empty. The framed photo of him and his wife Caro at the Amalfi Coast was gone. The little ceramic owl his daughter made him in kindergarten, gone. His monitor was still there, but the cables were coiled neatly on the desk. The drawer where he kept his backup hard drive was open and empty. The only thing left was a post-it note stuck to the keyboard. It said, "Marcus, we'll talk soon." That's it. No signature. No explanation. Like he was running 10 minutes late to a meeting. I sat down in his chair. I think I sat there for an hour. Maybe longer. People started coming in, our designer Priya, our 2 account managers, our intern. I could hear them through the wall, asking each other where Daniel was, where I was. I couldn't make my body stand up. My phone started ringing around 9:30. It was Jonas Becker, our biggest client. 42% of our annual revenue. I let it go to voicemail because I couldn't trust my voice. He called again at 9:33. And again at 9:41. When I finally picked up he said, "Marcus, I'm a little confused. I got Daniel's email about the transition over the weekend, and I just want to make sure everything is in order before we sign the new agreement with him on Thursday." The new agreement. With him. I kept my voice flat. I asked Jonas to forward me the email Daniel had sent. I told him there had been a misunderstanding and I'd call him back within the hour. I hung up and sat there waiting for the forward to come through and my hands were shaking so hard I had to put the phone on the desk. The email was a masterpiece. I have to give him that. It was warm, it was professional, it was personal. It explained that Daniel was stepping into a new venture called Meridian Growth Partners, that this transition had been discussed and approved internally, and that he would be personally continuing all current client relationships under the new banner, with the same team and the same level of service. There was a calendar link. There was a new contract attached. There was a new logo that looked suspiciously like ours with the colors inverted. It had gone out to every single client on our roster. All 53 of them. Sent Sunday night at 11:47 p.m. I checked our CRM. He had exported the entire database on Friday afternoon at 4:18 p.m. Every client, every contact, every contract value, every pricing structure, every internal note about who liked what and who hated what. 11 months of relationship history. He had also downloaded our pitch decks, our process documents, our pricing models, and the templates I personally built in 2019 when we were still working out of his garage. Then I checked the lease on our office. Daniel's name wasn't on it. Only mine. I had signed it personally because his credit was rebuilding after the divorce settlement from his first marriage in 2021. He said it would just be for a year. It had been 4 years. 41 months left, at $8,400 a month. I started doing the math in my head and I had to stop because I thought I was going to throw up. $344,000 in remaining lease obligation. $86,000 on the line of credit, which was also in my personal name. Payroll due Friday, $28,000 for 5 employees who had no idea their company had just been gutted. And $412 in the bank. I walked out of his office and I told the team to come into the conference room. I closed the door. I told them the truth. All of it. I watched Priya put her hand over her mouth. I watched our intern, Devin, who was 22 years old and had just moved here from Ohio for this job, start to cry silently. I told them I couldn't promise them anything past Friday, but I would pay them what I could and I would write them references that would make their next employers fight for them. 2 of them stayed. 3 of them left that day. I didn't blame any of them. That night I drove to Daniel's house. I didn't plan to. I just found myself parked across the street from the Colonial on Brennan Court that I had been to 100 times. 4 barbecues. For Mia's birthdays. For Kuro's 40th. The house was dark. There was a for sale sign on the lawn. The number on the sign was a Scottsdale area code. He had been planning this for months. The new LLC was registered in October. The Scottsdale property had closed in January. The wire transfers were just the last step. I sat in my car and I cried for the first time in maybe 15 years. Not because of the money, though God knows the money was going to break me. I cried because I kept thinking about Thanksgiving. 4 months earlier. He had sat at my dining room table and told my mother she was the closest thing to a mom he had left since his own past. He had hugged my wife. He had let my son fall asleep on his shoulder during the movie after dinner. And the LLC paperwork was already filed. The Scottsdale offer was already in. He had looked me in the eye for 4 months knowing exactly what he was going to do. That's the part one still can't get past. Not the theft. The theater of it. I got home around 1 a.m. and my wife, Helene, was awake at the kitchen table. I told her everything. She didn't say much. She just held my hand across the table and let me talk for 2 hours. At the end she said, "Okay. We figure it out. That's all. We figure it out." The confrontation came 8 days later, and not the way I imagined it. I had hired a lawyer, a woman named Adiz Okafor, who specialized in partnership disputes. She was the one who told me, very calmly, that what Daniel had done was not just a civil matter. The wire transfers, given how the operating agreement was structured, were almost certainly criminal. Embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of trade secrets. She filed a temporary restraining order on the Meridian accounts within 48 hours and froze $91,000 before he could move it again. But the real moment came when I walked into the deposition room at her office on a Thursday morning and Daniel was already sitting there. In a navy suit I had never seen before. With a lawyer next to him who kept whispering in his ear. He looked up when I came in and he tried to smile. Like we were meeting for lunch. Like none of this had happened. I didn't sit down right away. I stood at my end of the table and I looked at him and I said, very quietly, "Devin had to move back to Ohio. His parents drove out to pick up his stuff last weekend. He couldn't afford the U-Haul." Daniel's smile cracked at the edges. I said, "Priya's mother is in a memory care facility that costs $4,200 a month. She's been there for a year and a half. Priya doesn't have insurance anymore because of you." His lawyer started to interrupt. Adiz held up her hand. I said, "You told my mother she was your second mom. At my dinner table. In November. You already had the paperwork filed." And then he said the thing I'll remember for the rest of my life. He said, "Marcus, it wasn't personal." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It came out of me like a cough. I said, "Daniel, you held my son on your lap." He looked down at the table. He didn't look up again for the next 4 hours. The settlement came 11 months later. By then I had rebuilt. Not fully. Not the way it was. But I had 9 clients of my own, 4 of whom had been Brightline clients who came back to me after the dust settled because they figured out very quickly what Daniel was really like once they were locked into a contract with him. The settlement returned $217,000 of the stolen funds, forced the dissolution of Meridian Growth Partners, and included a non-compete that would have been laughable to enforce if Daniel had still wanted to be in the industry. He didn't. He moved to Scottsdale. I heard through someone that he's selling commercial real estate now. I heard Caro left him last spring. I didn't celebrate when the settlement came through. I went home and Helene poured me a small glass of bourbon and we sat on the porch and I thought about Devin in Ohio and Priya's mother and the for sale sign on Brennan Court and the empty coffee machine. The thing nobody tells you about being betrayed by someone who knew you completely is that you don't lose the years. The years still happened. The trips, the dinners, the laughs, the time he held my son. Those were real, even if the man wasn't. What you lose is the ability to ever again believe, fully, that the person across the table is telling you the truth. I carry that loss every day. And I think I'll carry it until I die.